Hey everybody, it's Chris here with Off-Road Farm, and today's video is going to be part 2 of this Dana 60 reassembly video. So I went ahead and I split these videos up into 2 parts because it was getting kind of long. It was a little over 30 minutes. So what I want to know from you guys, and leave it in the comments down below, is what would you rather see? Would you have one long 30-minute video, or do you prefer me to split it up kind of like I did here? Just let me know. Thanks for watching, everybody. So this is the outer stub shaft, the big seal around the outside. I think that came off whenever I was washing it. We still have this little seal right here. Should be able to just pick it off with a screwdriver real easy. Whenever you pull it off, you'll notice that the lip, well, you can't even hardly see it, but there you can. That lip goes towards the inside. Now we've got this thrust washer here. Same thing, it has a recess in it. It goes towards the universal. Now we'll just knock this dust cap off. So we've got our new dust cap. I just put a real light coat of grease on the inside, and it should just kind of slide right up there. This lip goes towards the hub. Then we're going to take our, I think this is bronze thrust washer. Same thing, we're just going to take a little bit of grease, try to hit that inside lip, and that inside recess goes towards the universal. Just slide that up. So we got our new seal. We're just going to take and we're going to pack that lip with some grease. Now we're just going to slide it, the void or the lip, towards the universal. It will be snug once it gets up there to the machine surface. Alright, so we've got our big outer seal. I'm just going to take a little bit of grease and put it on this, on the inside. I wouldn't worry about packing this void just yet, because by the time you get it on there, it's just going to all be squished out. Now this one you do kind of have to force on there. So this inner seal here, the lip goes towards the universal. This big outer seal, the lip goes towards the hub. So we're all done. So now let's go slide this back in the housing.
Now before you reinsert your axle, make sure you get it nice and clean, and I also recommend either a light coat of grease or a light coat of oil. That'll help it slide over those seals a little bit better so we don't tear them.
Before we put the spindle back on, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put some more grease right here around the spindle bearing. We're also going to put a light coating here where that seal rides. So before we put our spindle back on, we're going to go ahead and we're going to pack this area here with some grease, like I've already done. We don't need to fill it up completely, or else it's just going to go everywhere whenever we put our spindle on. But we do want to get some grease in there for those seals. Last thing we're going to do before we put our spindle back on, we're going to put a little bit of anti-seize on this mating surface. Alright, so we're getting ready to put the spindle back on the knuckle. Keep in mind, this bolt pattern is asymmetrical, so it's only going to go on one way. The easiest way is to remember that where your locking tab goes is going to be up. I'm going to do the same thing on our caliper bracket. We're just going to put some anti-seize on. Remember, where that set screw came out, it's going to go towards the bottom. Next, we're going to do our dust shield. After our dust shield, we've got the ring. Now we're ready for our washers and our nuts. Now we're just going to put our washers and our nuts back on. Alright, now we're going to torque these down to 65 foot-pounds. Before I grease up this spindle, I thought I'd show you how the spindle nut works. So as you can see, this first or inner spindle nut, it's got a little protrusion on it right there. That's going to go out. So obviously you would put your hub on, you've got a seal, your inner bearing, and then your outer bearing. Then you're going to start this spindle nut on, and according to the service manual for this truck, we're going to torque it to 50 foot-pounds, then we're going to back it off 90 degrees. Then we're going to take our locking ring, and it will only fit on one way. And we're going to try to line those two holes up. Now, in this instance, it just happens to be perfect. But if it doesn't, a lot of times you can just rotate it around and then it'll fit on there. Now you take your outer spindle nut and you tighten that up, and that's what keeps your spindle nuts tight. So let's get all this off here and grease everything up so we can start putting it back together. So not only do we want to grease our spindle, but we also want to grease this hub. So this area right in here in front of this bearing, there's a recess there in between this race and that bearing. We want to pack that with plenty of grease too. Alright, now we're just going to slap this hub on. Now we're going to take our outer bearing, put it in there. Now we're going to get our inner nut, and what I find is easiest is go ahead and put it in your spindle nut socket. It's a lot easier to get it started that way. Now we're just going to snug it up a little bit while we're turning this. Alright, so we just there got a little bit of pressure, so we're going to stop. And we're going to go get the torque wrench. So we got the torque wrench set to 50 foot-pounds. While we're tightening it, we're going to be spinning this. Alright, that says it's 50. Now what I like to do is I like to give it a good spin. Then I'm going to back it off. Now we're going to re-torque it. after doing that twice, now it's time to back it off 90 degrees. So keep in mind where your wrench is. And that ought to be real close to 90 degrees. Now we're going to take this locker here. Alright, so now we've got our inner nut and our locking washer on there. So now we're just going to put on our outer spindle nut. I like to put it down in this spindle nut socket. Get it started by hand. So there's 50 foot-pounds. And it's locked. I like to actually put just a little bit more on the locker. Now let's get this hub in there. Alright, so now we're going to put this hub in. We've got everything kind of greased up. We don't want to get super heavy with the grease in this. Just enough to kind of help everything move along, but not so much that that engagement gear is not going to be able to move back and forth. There it goes. Now we're going to put this snap ring on the end of the axle. You might have to reach back here and move that axle out just a little bit. Here we go, we've got that in. Now we need to put in this big snap ring that retains it. If you could just get one side started, a lot of the times you can just kind of push it in. If you can't get it to push in, you can just take a small screwdriver. There we go. Now we're just going to take our inner spring, just going to get a little bit of grease on it. It's going to go in there. We've got our spring in, then we're just going to put this gear in. We're going to find where our little keeper screw goes. And that's just a little Phillips. Before we try to put the outer hub assembly on, the one that lets you select lock or free, we're going to go ahead and reassemble it here. It's going to be a lot easier. So you don't have to take it completely apart like I did, but I wanted to be able to clean everything up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of grease on this O-ring seal. We're going to do the same thing on this O-ring right here. Also just going to put a little bit of grease in these threads. Same thing as before, we don't want to go super heavy. We just want everything to move nice and smooth. Alright, now that we've got everything pre-greased, that spring goes in there with this cup up. This part is going to go down, and you'll have to play with it here just a little bit to get it to seat all the way to the bottom. And if you screw it most of the way out, that's going to be locked. Then take a socket. This is 1 5/16 inches. We're going to place it in there, turn it upside down so that we can hold this down so we can get our screw started. Now remember, we should be close to lock. So once we feel that engage, then we can put our screw on. Now remember, that is just plastic, so we don't want to go crazy with it. We don't want to strip it out. And now let's just make sure that it works. It's working. All right, let's go put it back on the axle. All right, now we're ready to put this back on. Now keep in mind, these little tabs here will fit. It'll only go on in a certain area, kind of like that. Now we're just gonna get a couple of these bolts started, and we'll tighten them up, and we'll make sure the hub works. Now we're just gonna tighten these up. Now let's see if it works. So it locked, and then it went to free spool. All right, now we got left is our calipers, wheels, and then we can get this thing off the table. All right, before you put your caliper on, your inner brake pad, it actually slides on first. Now we'll grab our caliper and we'll try to slide that over. Now keep in mind, you may need to put a C-clamp and back up your piston just a little bit. Now let's put it on. All right, so we got it in there. All right, now that we got it in there, it's time to put back our wedge. All right, if you can ever get this wedge started back, there we go. All right, now that we've got this driven in here, you can just put our set screw back. Now we're ready for wheels. And let's work on this tie rod. All right, so I upgraded this heavy duty tie rod from Offroaddesign. It's 1.5 inch by 3/8 wall. This thing is super beefy. All I did was I just adjusted it to the length of my old one, dropped it in. I've just got it in here nice and loose right now. I don't want to tighten everything down until I get it underneath the truck. I make sure everything looks good before I give it the final torque. So let's go ahead, we'll put our wheels on. Let's get this thing off the table finally.
Thanks everybody for watching. If you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, please hit the subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below.